Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. We're here for Loki Season 2, Episode 2, Breaking Brad. What a great name.
Brad. Yeah. Not bread. Brad.
No, or bad. It's not bread or bad. It's Brad.
Yep.
So, just an update on the SAG-AFTRA strike. The studios decided to be idiots and
What else is new?
they offered something that was less than what they offered before the strike. I don't understand why they thought that was going to be a good tactic, but they did it, and also misrepresented what the actors were asking for. I think they tried to say they're asking for like 2% of our revenues, which I don't understand why that would be a problem, but they were asking for what the equivalent of 2% of streaming revenues would be. So again, a fraction of what
sounds so unreasonable.
A fraction of what they're making,
especially when the bonus can just like quadruple that like easily. It's just like wow.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean,
Creed sucks. I hate Creed.
They're about to go into Q4 with a bunch of movies that still can't be promoted. So I hope that works out for them. I mean, I don't actually. I don't know why I tried to be sarcastic about it. They're being idiots. It's truly. We already said it was embarrassing before this, but this is truly embarrassing.
It's
for the studios that are struck. I no idea why. Anyway, so negotiations are shut down on that, and that's where we're at. But anyway, we're here to talk about Loki.
Yep.
Before we start, I know I already said that, but I did want to point out that I had a Twitter exchange. Not that makes it sound like it was beef. James Green and James was on the show. He did Men in Black with us. We're gonna have him back for more Men in Black and other things. But
yeah, we are.
He had seen more episodes than us of Loki, and he kind of put me at ease in terms of the stuff I was worried about, saying that some of the stuff we were worried about will be sorted out in at least the episodes he's seen. And I think he's been able to see 4.
Okay.
So
standard press kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. And then there was another conversation I had with my mom, funnily enough, about just me feeling like there's so many obvious things happening. Like, for instance, the dynamics of the people in the room during that conversation that we said was our favorite scene, and then hearing 2 white podcasters be like that was the worst scene, or not both.
I wonder why they thought that.
One of them thought it was 2 women, and I think that's important as well, because you would think they would be closer to understanding those dynamics. But anyway,
the way Trump women have voted have clearly.
I will leave it at that. But what I would say is, my mom just kind of like, I mean, you just have to live those experiences to like be able to catch them in stuff like this. So I guess it's good for us, and I guess gives us a niche in terms of what we bring. But it was frustrating me, and then when I was just like, I mean, those are just things that you can't really catch unless you live through them, and so I can't fault people on that.
Yeah, and that's just the reality, right? There's going to be always things that speak to me differently than speak to you or speak to any one of our audience members, and it's just, and this is why it's important for us to bring these kind of things up, is because other people will not appreciate it because it doesn't hit them that way, and when the whole like show is about something like that, obviously huge complaints, and then now that was like, oh, it's just woven into this very organically and very well. In my opinion, I'm like, you're still going to complain. So it's just clear to me that this is not for them.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but we enjoy it.
Yes.
And
I'm glad it's there.
And I'm very glad it's there. And the more I see that scene, I'm like, the more it is done intentionally.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see where they land on it, but I do think that either they got really lucky, or as you said, it was intentional. But yeah, and the other thing, which still leads into this, was to help me kind of contextualize how my complicated feelings
Mhm.
about Loki in particular, but these Disney Plus Marvel shows, is that
Mhm.
Marvel just put out a statement about how they're like, oh no, now we're
Yeah.
gonna have a showrunner. I'm like, well, you didn't before. Like, I don't know how. I mean, they essentially said we were just making movies and splitting them up into episodes, which I
Conceptually,
understood.
that's
I understood that to be the case, but it was like I thought you still were writing episodes instead of just being like, hey, we've got 8 hours. How do we split this up
Mm.
and rejigger it so it makes sense? Because I do think that plays into this episode specifically about just shooting
Mhm.
a bunch of stuff and then placing stuff wherever you need it to tell the story after the fact, instead
Mhm.
of having a showrunner, having a show bible, and just common sense things that every show has. Even if
Mhm.
your plan is to do essentially a movie, you would
Yeah.
still have that in place for TV because that's how TV works.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
and
yeah,
it feels like maybe this is one of those things where they try to use AI to piece the whole thing
no,
together.
I don't think that's what they're
No?
trying to do. I just
Okay.
think they were silly about how they approached this,
Oh, yeah, fair.
and a little naive. Like, I guess the best
Very naive.
people the way saying like, you know, that thing where like someone tells you to do something, and you're like, no, I can do it, and then you end up having to go back and do exactly what they told you to do in the first place because
Yeah, because your
actually
ego
knew what
got
they were talking because they
yeah, because
knew
their
what they were
ego
talking
got in the
about.
way.
Yeah, I think I think that was it. I think
Yep.
regardless if they had A or not, this was a mistake that was always going to be made because they didn't fully understand what they were getting into.
Yeah,
And at least now they do. So there's that.
it's one of the weirdest things because I was raised with this thought, and I'm going to change it because it was very gendered, but it's like wise people learn through counsel and people learn through mistakes, and Disney is just making mistakes, so
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
people and dummies, big old dummies with a lot of money, too much money for anyone to ever spend. That's ridiculous.
So, having said that, this we're finally going to start the episode.
Yeah,
It starts with Mobius and Loki looking for X5, which I was just
looking
like,
dapper.
did I
Looking for
miss
X5.
something? And I think this
Yeah.
explains like the whole. Well, they just pieced together something out of
Yep.
the footage they had because I was just like, I truly feel like I'm like for the first 5 minutes, I'm like, is this episode 3? Did they put out the wrong thing? Like, I'm truly not understanding why we've made these jumps, and
Yes.
I appreciate that by the end of the episode I can meet the show more than halfway and
Mhm.
understand what they were doing, but I just feel like I think some people were like, oh, they were trying to keep the mystery, and I'm like, I think and I'm not saying those people are wrong for thinking that. I'm saying I think the stuff that just came out, and that's why I took time to talk about it, is this is proof of that. Like, this is evidence of that, of like they had a bunch of footage and they're like, just put it like this so that we can get to the point of what we need to do. And again, I think that structurally that's an issue, but I enjoy spending time with these characters, especially X5 in this episode, the Brad of it all. I thought he was fucking amazing in this whole, because in the first episode I was like, I get this guy, like he's doing whatever, he's gonna be like the jock that kind of like picks on, and then like right away in his first scene in this, I'm like, oh, this the same actor? I'm like, it is, but like he is a great actor because he's just he carries himself differently, like everything about him is different in the, I'll just explain it, Brad Wolf section of this, where you see Loki and Mobius have gone to London in 1977 and they're at a movie premiere and it's X5. And I think that was my first time, like, wait, what the fuck is that? Is this a variant? Is it like, does he know them? Like, are they going to make a fool of themselves when he's like, I don't know who you are or whatever? But it really is, and I'll just cut to the chase, them saying that he just abandoned the whole looking for Sylvie thing. Yeah, like, I don't think you could do that off screen. I don't think that works. But whatever, they did it, but it was just like I'm truly having a hard time engaging with this because I don't understand why we would miss any of that.
Yeah,
and it's not like they show it. It's just a bunch of telling.
Yeah, that was what I was about to say. Is like, I hate the fact that they told us instead of showed us that he abandoned post and did all this kind of stuff, and basically, did the thing that was it B15 said last episode, is like, don't get back to your families, and how I was saying like, oh, how she didn't do that because she wanted everyone to be able to do that, and then he's just like, no, I want this for myself, and because I'm a movie star and all this, I'm gonna be selfish and just do whatever I want to do. And it plays out very, very well in this scene.
I think you're right about that. I think that's also what I was saying, like meeting the show more than halfway, because I think what they're trying to do is leave a bit of mystery as to what he actually was doing, so that they can
Mhm.
pull something later. But as you were saying, it's like, yes, if I'm to believe what they're saying, he did exactly what you just said.
Yep.
It just feels like, why wouldn't I be able to see him make that? That seems like
Mhm.
a big deal, so you can have a moment like B15 that I brought up last episode of him being like, "Oh, I'm happy." Like I
Yeah.
like to have such a big turn. Like we had all these things, and again, it's the second episode. I know I'm giving the show a lot of credit here based on the track record of MCU shows, but it's only the second episode. So yes, they can play this out. But we had
Mhm.
all those questions about like, what was that head bump thing, that not bump, but like, why were they touching foreheads and all, and that seems to just
Mhm.
be completely out the door at this point. And
Yeah.
like, I don't even know if I want them to revisit that, because it just seems like we're past that now. Like,
Right. And see, this is the whole head thing that they did. It was just like, okay, did this guy do this knowing that he's got that relationship with her, knowing that he will not get pruned or Peter, like, is he taking advantage of the associated power he has by being Mama's boy?
I don't think so, because his whole thing was like, "Get me out of here! Get me! I don't want to be here right now. I don't want to be." And I know that
Well,
his very
yeah,
immediate thing is, we're gonna die because they're pruning." And we're spoiling
yeah.
a bunch of stuff from later on, but I don't think that's what's happening.
Mm,
I'll say that I don't think there is a relationship there. And again, I can say that because I think they probably filmed some stuff with that, left that scene in because it's a creepy scene, and then they're probably just like, anyway, he's gonna abandon this shit.
yeah.
I
I'm
don't
I'm
think
pretty
there's
sure there's.
anything more to it that will show up in the show.
I think there will be, but I think it'll be told to us as opposed to
Hmm.
shown to us, or like maybe one flashback where it's like, yeah, you were my mom, we were happy, and I'm like, okay, sure, we'll
Maybe.
see,
I
we'll
think we
see.
saw what, because that was the sacred timeline. That wasn't a branched timeline, so that
Yeah, that
was
was
actually his
Sacred Wood.
life. So
Mhm.
I don't. That's why I'm saying I think we're past it now, because it's like I already
Yeah.
know what his background is. Like, seems like something that they. Anyway, that's it. They have this great chase. I like again. I like spending time with these characters. So there's
Mhm.
that scene where Mobius does a very cool, like, "Hey, is there going to be a sequel?" And that's when we realize, oh, okay, this is actually happening right now. This isn't like
Mhm.
a trick, or this isn't a simulation. He
Mhm.
just really is trying to live his life, X5 to be exact. And Mobius catches him, and then even Mobius is like, "Oh, don't worry, Loki. We'll be fine. We'll just have a drink with him." And Loki's like, "Is he running?" And he's like, "Oh, he is. Yeah, he is." Like, that exchange is great. I think they kept up the level of writing in this episode in terms of
Mhm.
dialogue and humor and stuff. And
Mhm.
what I liked about this scene, and I think it speaks to the point of this episode, was like, Loki, stop trying to be a hero. Like, there's something you actually
Mhm.
can do, and maybe get back to that, which is be the god of mischief. And
Mhm.
so this whole chase scene is him pulling all his like god of mischief tricks that are
Mhm.
mischief tricks, which I think I've seen other people even comment like, "Oh, I forgot." Like, not that I forgot, but like, it's been a while since he's done stuff like this. He's been on the back foot for so long. It's nice to see him actually, as considering he's the lead of the show, do something and like be
Mhm.
good at it.
See,
So it
this is
was
the
nice.
yeah, this I mean, this is a funny thing to me where everyone's like, you're the villain, you're the loser, you're this kind of stuff, and he embraces it. He starts using his powers again. I don't know if his refusal or not use of powers in season one was his way of being like, and I am reborn again. I am like trying to be good. I'm TVA trying to write my books, kind of thing, like write the ledger, like X5 says later on in the thing. But I and then his use of power is admitting, yeah, I'm evil, I'm a villain, I'm gonna use this or something like that.
I don't. That's why I said
Yeah.
God of Mischief. I don't think he's a villain. I didn't. I actually bumped up against X5 being like, "You're a villain. You're good at it." Because I'm like, no, actually, season one was a very thorough deconstruction of he's not good at it and he is a loser. So I don't
Yes.
understand how X5 could say you're a villain, you're good at it, and a loser all in the same breath and try and
Well,
live it.
he's good at just manipulating, trying to get under
Yeah,
skin.
that's fine.
Doesn't have to be true. Yeah.
I think it's wrong, and I don't, and I think it
Mhm.
actually muddies the water. But sure. So yeah, I think my point was that he is the god of mischief, so he's just dipping into that, and mischief doesn't necessarily have to mean evil or villainous. He's
Exactly.
just being mischievous and getting the drop on this other kind of like Weasley guy,
Hmm.
instead of
Hmm.
trying to be like, hey, like let's do the right thing here, and he says this isn't a fair fight, so I'm not going to fight fair. So yeah, I think that's more what I meant, and not the villain stuff, because I do think that the show, what I thought the show was about, was like finding yourself, learning to love all parts of yourself, and part of him is this mischievous stuff he can get into, and not abandoning that, not necessarily leaning into being a villain.
I agree with you on that. It's the idea of the self-love, him embracing the mischievous part, the playful part of himself, without turning that into other things. So there's this conversation he has, and I know we're going to get there, and we're going to talk about it quite a bit. But there's this conversation where it's like, oh, his perspective has shifted. This is very interesting. So him using these powers, not for mischief, not using evil or whatever, but just for mischief, to do things to get the results he needs, but are off the books, right? Because Owen Wilson's character in this Mobius in this episode is still very much by the books. Like, he's not going to run. He's not going to, like, this is TVA rule. This is how he's trained. He still believes in that kind of system, versus Loki is now being like, okay, I adjacent to this, but I'm using my own things to work within the system. I don't work here. It's good. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and I like that B-15 showed up as well. Like, obviously we know her voice, but it was nice. It was like, oh, can I get your autograph? And X5
that was a great
doesn't
scene.
even catch that.
Yeah,
she knocks him. Well, doesn't knock him out, but she gets him good with the punch. Yeah, and dismantles him for a bit. But yeah, so I liked this chase scene a lot. I thought it was good. It's just, you step back and think about it, you're like, why is all this happening based on where we left last night? Like, again, like, we left B-15 and D-90 kind of being like, what's going on here? And then she's just on this, and they made it seem like a bunch of time had passed as well since he'd left. So I'm just like, it just feels weird that we would jump seemingly like months or years for this.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it felt good. I enjoyed it. I will tell you that. And
because it is confusing, because when we're in the TVA, we're still like very much dealing with a loom kind of situation, right? So it's still like, yeah, we're going forward in time, and this is just like, this does feel like, oh, he's been playing his role for like months on end now, like,
at the least, like, just the way Loki talks about the amount of time he's been gone, he certainly had us, and I'm like, okay, so it's not like he was gone for a day. Like, clearly he's been gone for enough time for Loki to be like, he's found her. Obviously, there's no way he hasn't found her. But yeah, so they send him back to the TVA, and he's got
interrogation
that time pad. They've got, well, before that, he's got the time pad. Right. Like, well, what did you do to that? And he lies, and he says, oh, it's to block the TVA from tracking me. And that's all we know for up until that point, is that they're running off of that. So B-15 takes care of X5, and Loki and Mobius try to work on the time pad. They go to Ouroboros, and he's just like, I mean, I could work on this or stop this temporal meltdown. And they're like, okay, work on that. And he gives them the orange book. Is that the TVA guide? I can't tell if that's the handbook.
That is the handbook.
Something separate. Okay.
No, it's a handbook.
Because I just felt like they had read that last season. Nope. They never read that last
They
season?
never read it. That's the joke. That's the ongoing joke, is that, like, it's everything's available in that, but just literally no one's bothered to read the manual.
So then, yes, the book that Ouroboros wrote, the TVA hand guide, is given back to them, because they had it last episode too. There's that cool shot of Obi throwing it back to him. But so
would have loved it if I saw Loki like just immediately toss it to the side and be like, I'm not reading this. Like,
so they have to read it. There's great comedy of them trying to put it together, like, or I mean, take it apart, but it's like trying to put together something like IKEA or like some electronics. Like, well, did you try it when you were holding that down? Because I don't think you were holding that down. And
try it again.
Just good stuff there. Good stuff there. And then we learn that Casey has learned that Miss Minutes is the last person who contacted Renslayer on her time pad. Even though she erased all the data so they can't find her, they at least know that Miss Minutes was the last person to contact her. So that's interesting. And then,
it should be noted that they found her finally, because the strength of the signal is stronger now that they've pruned 30% of the timeline.
Well, let's wait before we don't have to jump to the end. Yeah, let's not jump to the end.
That's not the end. That's where it is.
No, it is not.
They said 30% in the beginning of it. They're like, it's approximately 30.
No. I just watched and took notes. That's at the end.
That's at the end?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
okay. Well, I'm probably wrong here. I
yeah,
usually
you
am
are.
in these situations.
Yeah, you because there's a bunch of Casey. So this is only the first time we see
That is
Casey, and all
true.
he's saying is, "I can't find her, but uh, I do know who contacted her last." That's
Okay.
all we know at that point.
I don't know.
Um, so then we have that scene I was talking about where they're not joking around, but it is funny that they're working on the time pad and trying to use the
Mhm.
hand guide, and so then Casey and B-15 show up to say that. And that's what Loki's like. Oh yeah, I should also tell you that He Who Remains was also talking to her, so I guess they're partners. And Mobius is like, when were you gonna share that? And B-15 has a very strong reaction to that. She's like, what a funny person she is. Like,
We knew what she was gonna say, and that's
yeah,
awesome. It's
yeah,
awesome
it's
that they
good
wrote
stuff.
that in. It's really good.
So then, and then this is also where Casey's like, wait, what are you doing with that? And they're like, oh, all we know is X5 told us that it can block TV. He's like, that's not what that's for. And like, he doesn't know exactly what it does because he has to like work through all the modifications. He's like, but I can tell you right now, it's not to block TVA signals. And so you're like, okay, Casey's back in the mix here. Like he's gonna be more important this, or at least for this stretch of the season.
Yeah.
So that's good because I like that actor Eugene Cordero.
And if the funny thing too is like if he is in the mix because he's read that book, I feel like he might have some like thing to do with Obi later on
Oh
in the
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
I believe. I mean, I agree with you that he
Mhm.
must. They're definitely gonna get paired up because they had like their little meet cute
Yeah,
section.
their little fanboy section thing
Yeah.
there is great. I loved it. Can you
So
sign
then
my book?
then we get to the interrogation, which
Mm-hmm.
so before we get into it, spoiler alert, Mobius is the one who cracks. And
Mm-hmm.
I figured that would be the case based on how like kind of condescending he was being before going in there of
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, so he's gonna fuck with us and so Loki, you better watch out. And it reminded me of Martin Freeman in Black Panther when he's like, I'll go in there and I'll do it properly and you Africans can go sit
Mm-hmm.
down. And so like I was just like, okay, so he's gonna be the one that fucks up. But I was not prepared for how unfunny it would be. I was like, oh shit, like that got real. Like
Yeah.
this is not being played for laughs. It's not even a little bit funny. Like
Mm-hmm.
this has really upset him. But basically, X5, the actor, kills it in this. I know X5 is an actor. The
Mm-hmm.
actor playing X5 and Brad kills it in this scene. I was just like, oh, like this guy is unstoppable. Like I thought he was great at deflecting everything they tried. Like
Mm-hmm.
even when Loki gets into the okay, yeah, so I did do terrible and horrible things. Maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do them to you. And he's just like, yeah, you're too hung up on Sylvie. Like you go figure that out. And
Yeah.
so then like Loki has to back off. And then I liked Mobius's approach of like knock knock, who's there, Brad, who he's like, that's showbiz. He's like, and I don't want that to happen to you. And I'm like, oh, nice work, Mobius.
Mm-hmm.
Even Loki laughs, and then he's just like, oh, would you do that for me? I'm like, oh shit, like X5 is not up for any of these games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he's like, none of this matters. This isn't real. We were abducted from our timeline,
Mm-hmm.
and this is bullshit. We don't need to be here. We don't need
Mm-hmm.
to do any of this stuff. We could just go live our lives, and that's what I'm going to do. And so, in that sense, I understood why he would make that change.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, like eventually they give you information, but it was just like, oh, this is so far into it that I'm just like, why didn't I get to see him like make some decisions on his own? But again, in the moment, I was like, he is doing a great job of like
Mm-hmm.
not breaking here at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he does it so well that he gets punched by Mobius. Like a very rare thing of you seeing, oh, Mobius wasn't in control there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think
And
one thing we liked is he was always in control, or it always seemed like he was in control, and he just wasn't in this scene.
yeah, and that's what I love about it. Like going into these interrogations is like whoever thinks that they have control is like, no, you're the first one that's gonna lose that because your ego is so wrapped up in the idea that you have the control that if anything goes wrong, it's gonna snap. And it broke really good here.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought Loki was gonna break too. Because he
Mm-hmm.
like X5's words cut. I was like, oh, he's going after that.
Well,
Oh.
I mean, this is why I didn't think he was going to break. Like, I
Mhm.
think he plays it well, where you're like, oh, I don't
Yep.
know where it's gonna go, but I didn't assume he would break only
Mhm.
because what X5 was saying was already said to him in season one.
True.
So it's like, yeah, he's had time to process this, and it's why I'm glad they didn't do the whole, oh, he got kicked to another universe. No, it's like he's still with people who will remind him of that, and it comes back again later on,
Right.
like remind him of like, yeah, these are people who know what you've done, so they kind of know in a nutshell what you're capable of. Like they will keep you humble if they need to.
And
so
I think one of the things that's
sorry, yeah.
I think one of the things that's really great about this too is like if season one's all about self-love and all that kind of stuff, then after you get to a point of self-love, you accept the things that make you flawed, right? And I feel like that's Loki's strength, is that he has gotten to that point where he's accepted those things that make him flawed, which is why he embraced his powers again in this episode and all that kind of stuff. And that it's kind of like that scene in 8 Mile where he's freestyles like, this is all the things that everyone makes fun of me about, so you got nothing now, like you got no ammo, what are you going to do about it? I think that's great for him, and clearly Mobius is clinging on to a delusion that he's got, or something that is so easily broken and so fragile, and like, and
I think this is a good example of leaving something for later, which is you hint at like, okay, talking about what he could possibly be on the timeline is a touchy subject for him.
Yes.
I think that is good to be like, oh, like, why is that? And then explain that later. And I won't talk about what in comparison to other stuff. We've already covered that ad nauseam. But this, I think, is good setup and payoff of like, he always seems so like relaxed about everything. And so then when you really push him on like, you're nothing here. Like, this is pointless. You're a nowhere man. Like, this is bullshit. Just get on with it. Go back and see what you really could be. I was just like, yeah, like he really doesn't want to do that. Like you're pushing him now, and he really just doesn't want to be pushed that way. Yeah. And I thought that was great. I thought that he found someone to crack with, because he didn't even really try with B-15. I think he had a couple of shots of like, weren't you rambling about this like last episode? Like, and you're gonna get mad at me for doing what you said I should do. And so then she's just out after that. She's like, I mean, fair point. Yep, I did say you should do this.
Yep.
And he's like, I don't even want to start on Loki, and you need to figure it out. Like he's like, wake up, man, wake up. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting stuff, and we will get to that. But I agree with you that this is how you get under Mobius's skin, which is. And we already knew that from season, maybe not get under skin, but we already knew from season 1, like don't try and push him on the TVA's relevance or what the TVA is there for. He is committed to it. That's what he wants to, how he wants to live his life.
Yeah, because he's found purpose in here. He's found something that he cares about, and to threaten the idea of it's not real, it's meaningless, and what you care about is not real, that is the existence of a lot of people's insecurity. Like it's just, you tell someone that what they believe in is delusional, and you can watch them turn their whole world upside down real quick and become someone else. And that's exactly what happened here. And it's great. It's a great deconstruction of his psyche.
Yeah, I really liked it. So then once X5 is hit, that's when Loki has to take Mobius out. Yep. I mean, Mobius already motions towards the door. Like, it's not like they had to drag him out, but it was like, okay, we're done here. This didn't go the way we needed it to go. And I love the bit of comedy of him like storming off and then being like, where are we?
Like, I was following you. You know, you're directly in front of you.
Yeah, that was good stuff. But even throughout that, he's like, no, that was tactical. I hit him, and Loki's like, dude, come on. I understand that it wasn't. This is a safe space here. You can just explore this with me. Don't worry about putting up guards. And I like that they even have that beat of Mobius being like, it seems like you are judging me. And I don't think Loki was, but I think that was part of his defense. But I like that they brought out that he did feel judged or was afraid of being judged for that. It humanized him even more. I thought that was a good beat to add to an overall comical beat of him walking and not knowing where he was going. Yeah,
basically throwing a temper tantrum. And I do like the fact that, like if we're doing like the good cop, bad cop thing here, it's like, your partner truly does know that you lost it. You can't lie to them. You like, that's not you. Like, I'm the one that screws up, not you kind of situation. It's really, really good pairing of these two together.
So then they have some pie, and I love that Loki's like, I get it. Sometimes you just lose your cool. Like that time I got mad
Mhm.
at my brother and my dad, and I tried to take over the earth and held New York hostage and
Mhm.
tried to. He's like, I tried to control Tony Stark with the Mind Stone. It didn't work, so I threw him out a window. Not tactical. Like
Mhm.
it happens. Don't worry about it.
See, this is the kind of growth I was talking about. His self growth, his understanding of like looking back at it. Yeah, that was a temper tantrum. I got mad at my brother and my dad, and I did this,
Hmm.
and that he's just looking back at all the things that he was like, I did this. I was so smart. I was nope, nope. You weren't. You see the reality for what it was now, and it's really, really fascinating to see it.
And it works because he's with a Mobius that already knows all of that. Like
Absolutely.
that's what I was afraid of at the end of season one, which was like, oh, he's gonna have to go through all of this again. But no, he can have these conversations with people who are like, yeah, and Mobius doesn't have to say anything. It's just a nice smile on his face when he's like,
Mhm.
I get what you're doing, and that's
Mhm.
great. And yes, I do. I remember that. We went through the footage.
Mhm.
Like I, all of that is great. I think that
Mhm.
works really well.
Mhm.
In terms of their shared history and why I would be upset if they actually tried to like be like, no, he's just in a different timeline now. So
Yeah.
this is a good payoff of that course correction. If it was or if it wasn't, it feels like a course correction of like,
Mhm.
no, it was just a time thing. Don't worry, it wasn't a space thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that this conversation is a nice beat to have. That
Mhm.
I get it. You lost your cool. It happens. Don't like
Yeah.
this doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do. Just shake it off. You're Mobius still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's really fascinating because on some level it's Loki recognizing like, hey, I see what you're doing, that like outward mask that you're putting on the world to be this cool, calm, collected guy. I used to do that, and it was back in New York and all that, and being vulnerable and being able to empathize and sympathize with what
mhm.
Mobius just went through, I think is such a fascinating thing. But also that key lime pie don't look right. That
Yeah,
that
I
green
don't
right. I know they did it for Loki, but that don't look right.
know. It made me feel like something's up with that because it's not like they were like, oh, I know where we are. They're
Yeah,
just it just was there, so it just felt weird. I
yeah,
maybe we'll come back to that, but I agree with you that I was just like that's very off. But I don't like key lime pie, but it looks very off putting. And
yeah.
the point was like it was set up like a cafeteria, even though there was only key lime pie to have. Like
Yep.
every window just had that pie, and it
Mhm.
looks so like electric green and
Mhm.
weird. So
But
yes,
I
I
also
agree
like
with
the
you. It's
idea,
off.
yeah, that idea of false choice within the TVA, and like what
Yes.
Sylvie is ultimately dealing with is like we all have freedom of choice, and then Loki's like, but I still see you in the end. So is our future written or is it not? Like it's a very interesting thing. It's like, do you want key lime pie or is that the only thing that's available? Like
Yeah.
it's very interesting and fascinating.
Yeah.
But that don't look right. It looks
No,
sus.
it looks really weird. And then so then Loki's like, yeah, so just curious, like why aren't you more interested in seeing what your life was?
Yes.
And uh I like that Mobius is like, well, I wouldn't really be able to handle it if I had a good life. Like
Yeah.
it would be fine if I was ripped away from a shitty life, and
Hmm.
it actually helps me to think that that's what the case is because
Yeah.
now I can have a good life here in the TVA, and I was ripped away from it. But like, if it's true that I was ripped away from a good life to do this possibly unnecessary thing and probably hurt like
Hmm.
hurt a destructive thing, then yeah, I don't think that would really work for me. I don't think that's something I want to have to deal with and have rattling in my head. So I
Hmm.
like that we got a clear answer on that, which is
Yes.
don't tempt me with that because if it is good, that could destroy me.
Yeah, he needs to be in the delusion that he's built up right now, and it's slowly deteriorating
Well,
in
because
front
he
of him.
sees like, oh, B-15 was happy.
Yes.
Clearly, X5 is happy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really. The odds aren't great that I'm not gonna be happy if I look at what,
Hmm.
or that I wasn't happy on the sacred timeline.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I agree with this thought process, but at a certain point, we're going to see what it actually is. All his timeline and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be heartbreaking to see
Yeah.
because he's
Well,
probably
I
going to be
mean,
happy with a family or something like that.
that's part of I mean, for lack of a better term, how like white supremacy works, right? He's a white cishet man that is like, well, I work at the TVA, which I get to choose what happens and I get to do what I want to do. Why would I actually want to possibly give that up or acknowledge that I'm in the wrong here? It doesn't really work for me. So I'm not truly invested in this stopping.
Yeah.
And I that doesn't make it less impactful when you hear his reasoning for, but it's just like, there's probably a bunch of people who don't in real life that think that way as well. Like, this, but what happens if like they can't fathom a world without the system we have in place that favors them? So like, I'm not really like willing to take a gamble on that. Let's just keep it the way things are.
Yeah, that's I mean, Sylvie brings it up at the end of the episode, which we'll get to, but the whole idea of like the defund the police argument. It's like, well, what about my protection going away? We can't do that. It's anything that threatens their position. It is it's what they'll cling on to, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. So then Mobius is like, all right, so you're going to get back to being the god of mischief so we can break this guy? Because they're like, yeah, this is the conversation we're talking about where Loki's like, it's been long enough. He definitely knows where Sylvie is. They were sent out to go find her. He definitely found her. Like, there's no chance he just was like, oh, no, I'm going to just live my life. He found her, and the only way this works is if she doesn't know he found her. And so they go back. They have a great interrogation scene where they have the ruse of Loki locking Mobius out and him constantly being, no, Loki, don't do it. And it works because he's back to being like, I'm gonna fuck with you. Like, this, I'm not just gonna ask you straight up questions and hope for the best or hope I can outsmart you. I'm just going to throw you off and make you upset, and here we go. And I was like, great, this is at least using Loki the way you should in a Loki show.
Yeah.
Which is driving things a bit more.
It's doing the thing that nobody else can.
By the end of it, you still kind of get to like, I guess this would have been fucked no matter what. But at least in real time, you're like, okay, this is more like, it feels better that we're focusing on Loki right now. I still was kind of like, when are we going to get to Sylvie? But I wasn't too upset in the process because I was still enjoying seeing the characters I was seeing. So yeah, I like the first thing of like, you can't even use this thing on me without the remote. And Loki's like, oh, this remote? And I'm like, way to go, Loki. I knew you had it, but way to go. Like, what a great reveal. And then you just see X5 like slowly be like, oh fuck.
And I like how X5 is adding to his own anxiety. He's like, wait, you don't even know how to use that. I'm like, do you think he cares? Do you think he cares right now? I mean, that's adding to everything.
My thing was, he definitely knows how to use it. That's the only way that this would work, because he wouldn't risk hurting himself either. But I like that he was
killing him. Yeah,
I like that he was like, "You could kill me." He's like, "Could I?" Like the way he says, "Could I?" You're like, nice. That was very effective.
Yes,
very effective delivery.
Yep, you called me a villain. That's what I do. So,
but I think that was more what you were talking about earlier of him being like, "Oh, now that's interesting. Could I?" Like, I think selling the idea of like, "Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that, but if I can." Even better. Like, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's why I'm like,
this is more interesting now.
Yeah, he's adding to his own anxiety right now, and it's like, this is the best thing. It's Loki not even having to do much. It's just like, no, I'm gonna let you play your own mind games on yourself. It's great.
So then he agrees that he'll show them where Sylvie is.
Yep.
And I guess like at this point when I'm rewatching, I'm like, so is the whole thing that General Dox's plan is let them have X5 because we can just keep doing what we need to be doing while they're busy dealing with him?
This is what I really wanted to unpack, because that weird relationship makes me be like, okay, why didn't General Dox be like, where's my surrogate son? Why hasn't he come back to me yet in this operation that, we're clearly executing out? It's a weird scenario where you're like, okay, you have that level of intimacy and now you don't. And there's no questions you're right, that there needed to be some sort of scene being like, oh, X5 is just abandoning everything, including Mama. So,
or I mean, I'm not convinced about the Mama thing anymore, but I would say like it only makes sense to me if there was, and I still would have liked to see some kind of acknowledgement of that in this episode of them being like, Yeah, like her hearing, oh, they caught X5, and her being like, okay, great, we're on schedule then, or something like that. Like I was like, just yeah, they let that happen, because as I already kind of alluded to, it's in their best interest that Mobius and B-15 and Loki aren't looking for them, and that they think that they're ahead of the game by capturing X5.
Yeah.
But that's not really explained in here, so I'm just kind of like, so did he really leave, or is this all still part of the plan? I genuinely can't tell.
Yeah.
And by the end of the episode, I still can't tell. But they take him back to where we saw Sylvie at the end of episode 1.
McDonald's.
This is where you are still like, wait, something is up, because he's like, okay, like, and he's not very convincing, and I don't mean that in he's acting poorly. I think the character isn't being convincing. I think the actor is doing a great job.
Yes.
But the character of being like, no, I just don't want to be around someone who killed like so many of our, and like, that's not true. Something is up. Like, I like that they planted that seed. Like, he brought them here, but something is still up, because he's being so weird about this.
Oh, he's being shifty. 100%. He's being shifty.
Yeah. So then they see her or Loki sees her at the counter. I like the running commentary from Mobius and X5. I'm like, oh, this is awkward, but like, this is intense. And she's kind of like, this is another thing I didn't fully understand. She's mad at him, and I'm just like, I can see her being like, I don't want to see you because it means you're going to bring me back. But she's acting like you owe me an apology, and I'm like, what? You kicked him out the door after he said, I just want to see you happy. So I don't really, I think I'm missing something about her, the way she's playing it. Like, it. Yeah, I understand she wouldn't be like, oh, so happy to see you. I get that part, but she's playing it like he owes her some kind of like kneeling at her altar of like, I'm so sorry, and I'm like, I think you should just be like, get out of here. I don't want you to bother me, and like, I found happiness. But she's just like, so you have anything to say? And I'm like, I don't fully understand this take.
So I kind of get it in the sense where it's like, hey, I feel betrayed by you. We did this adventure. We found each other. We did this. And then right at the last minute, when we were going to do the thing that I've been talking about the entire time, you decide to pull out, you change your mind, all this kind of stuff, and support him instead. I'm imagining she feels betrayed by that. That's just me projecting or thinking about it. But like, that's the only thing to me that makes sense about how she feels.
The way it actually played out wasn't that he picked He Who Remains Silent. He's like, I pick you. I'm doing this in service for you. Like, let's not make a hasty decision right here that screws us over. And then she was like, no, I pick myself, and got rid of him. And so, as I said, I don't think that means that the next time she sees him, she'll be happy to see him. That's not what I'm complaining about. It's more how they acted out how she feels about him. It just felt like this would make more sense if she was looking for Loki and he was acting like this, because she rejected him. He didn't reject her. He was actively like, I just care about you. I want you to be happy. I don't care about the power. The power means nothing to me if I don't have you. So whatever you want to do, but let's think about this for a little bit longer. And she was like, fuck it, no. So I don't really fully understand that. And again, this only ties into me being like, I think scenes are missing, or they're just piecing things together. And there's parts of performances we'll never see that explain better why these certain things are happening. But yes.
Well, I mean, one of the other things to consider is the idea, like Loki showing up, Loki finding her with Mobius and all that kind of stuff means that her vacation away from everything is done. Like, it's just she's being pulled back to reality.
I understand that she would be like, get away, I don't want any parts of this. But she didn't start with that. She started with like all right, like, explain yourself, which doesn't make sense. They eventually get there when he's like, I know you don't want to see me. And she's like, right, because I found happiness, so leave me alone. But she didn't really start there, and I was just like, I'm she's just started confrontational. This. She just started defensive and like, oh crap, like, I don't know what this is. I just know I'm in danger or scared or anxious right now, and I'm gonna be defensive and reactive. That's all I felt like that maybe was. But you're right, the tone of it now talking about it is like, wait, you're mad at him? Yeah, because everything you're saying is right. I can see her putting up a front. I can see, but I still think kind of like how the actor of X5 did a good job of giving you where he's at. Like, I'm scared, but I'm still going to put up a front, or I'll tell them I'm scared, but I'm not, because I already know what's going on. Like, the differences in the interrogation scenes and stuff like that. You have a better sense of what he's at, like the subtext of what he's doing. This felt like the subtext was you owe me an apology instead of oh shit, my vacation's over. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like the immediacy of like what do I do here? It really did feel like all right, well, explain yourself. Like what are you gonna do? And it was like oh, I don't know, but he has to explain it. He did already. He said everything he had to say. But anyway, we'll move on. So yeah, basically you learn that he's like, I saw you in the future. And she's like, I don't care. Stop talking to me about it. I don't have any answers for you. Even when he said, just enchant me, you'll see that I'm not lying. And she's like, I don't even want to do that. I don't want anything to do with this. Leave me alone.
Which he was super against in season 1 too. He's like, don't enchant me ever. And like, that's a boundary. And now he's like, oh, like he's being so vulnerable here. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And then he's like, so if you are happy here, then the TVA is the only way to protect that. And I like that comes back later. We'll get to it. But she's just like, no, get out of here. Get out of here with that bullshit. Like, I can't. And he's like, so what are you going to do then if more Kangs come? So I'll kill them. Like, I killed He Who Remains. And I like that she was even like, oh, and you're trying to say that, like, our futures are written? I made sure that wasn't the case. Like, the smile on her face when she's like, I made sure that's not going to happen. All of that is good stuff. It's just the way it started. It just felt like they found the scene later on in filming, but it started off in such a weird spot for me. But it got to where it needed to get to.
I agree. It started off very, very weird. But I mean, after that kind of breakup, kind of like, when you see your ex, it's never comfortable. It's never good.
And that's what I said.
But,
it is all in the execution of how she's showing those. And that's why I gave the example of the X5 thing of the care that was put in. And going back to my original complaint of Sylvie actually drives the stuff. It's like it should be about her. And we spend less time with her than X5. I know the episode's named after him. But like seeing the amount of care they can give into actually showing you his thought process in an interesting way. Versus this, where it does feel just kind of like whatever, like put her best takes together. We'll see what we have here. It didn't feel as they were taking much care with her in this, as much
I would agree.
care or much care.
I would agree.
So I think this is where Mobius just having a great time eating his apple pie. He's got his meal there, and he's like, "Look, this is great. Like 10 minutes ago, I hit you. You were yelling at me.
Yeah,
and now we're showing." He's like, "Wait. Is this still a setup?" And again, you're seeing how shifty he's being. You're not talking, but you see what's going on, and if you didn't know before, you're like, "Oh, something's definitely up. Something as bad is about to happen." And then we cut back to Sylvie and Loki, and Mobius comes, and he's like, "Yeah, Brad has something he wants to share with us." And he's like, "Yeah, we're all gonna die. This is," and essentially he reveals the idea that General Docs was like, well, we're just going to prune all the timelines. That's the plan. Like, I'm not listening to Judge Gamble. Judge Gamble said we're not going to do it, but I'm doing it. I'm pruning every timeline. And so he's like, so this is going to be gone soon. So we need to get out of here now. I know we don't have time to talk. Let's go to the TVA. Let's go to the Sacred Timeline, anywhere but here. We cannot be here anymore. So I think they just send him back to the TVA. And then Mobius radios into B15 being like, yeah, like they're just pruning the timelines. They didn't listen at all. And before they do that, I guess that's when Sylvie enchants Brad and sees where they went to, and so they go there. And that's when I was kind of getting this sinking feeling of like, wow, they're really like, it doesn't really matter what Loki does. Like, like X5 says, like, you're just a loser, so like you don't really have an effect on it. You don't make things better, and and I don't think he made things worse in this situation. But it's like, yeah, like you're not helping because they're still just gonna prune all these things. Like, yes, he made it so that there was less damage, but it was like a lot, like billions of people are dying right now. This is rough stuff to watch. So yeah, you see that, and that is the conversation that Casey is having while all these prunings are happening. They're looking at the thing, they're like, fuck, like, where is this coming from? He's like, I can't pinpoint it, but I can see Renslayer now because of all the pruning that's happened. It's less like looking for a needle in a haystack now because they're setting off the bombs, and I can actually see where she is now. That's why her signal's so strong.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes in, and I don't even really remember what they do with X5. I think he just lands on the floor and they're like, KK got him again. And
Yeah,
they have a
basically.
cool fight scene. They work together again, which I think we loved in season 1.
Hmm.
That like anytime Sylvia and Loki actually work together, they get shit done.
Yeah.
And so they do the big magic green blast. And I do like her comment of don't overthink it. Just take my hand, let's do this. And very quickly they're like, okay, we got Docs and her loyalists. We're heading out now. And I'm like,
Wow, that was so fast.
another thing that seems cut, but all right.
Yeah,
Like
that was so fast. Like, what?
It's it really was in the editing of just like this whiplash thing of like, okay, got him. I was like, wait, is the way the person's walking still feels like they're still doing what they need to be doing, and you're
Yep.
like, but it's D90, and you're like, oh, okay, the good guys won, or the less bad guys won this thing. All
Mhm.
right.
It just felt so weird that there would be no defenses of the actual location where they were executing all these bombs,
Because I
all
don't
that kind
even
of
really
stuff.
know how they got there. I'm just like, whatever. The show said that. I know she has her thing. Like, she's
Yeah,
got her time pad. Like, she's got
yeah,
her thing. But I guess, yeah, they just vamped into there without detection.
or
I guess
defenses or anything else.
I can't really knock the show because she's got, like, He Who Remains thing. So I got to imagine that's better than anyone else's time pad in terms of getting where they need to go.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that happens all very quickly. And I said it before, I'll probably say it many times. This is only the second episode, so I'm assuming that they didn't actually clear things up. Because I've rewatched the trailer, I'm like, oh, he's still time slipping in the trailer and scenes we didn't see in episode 1. So that's
Yeah.
probably going to come back, and Docs will definitely come back. So I don't know. It's I enjoyed the time with the characters. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah, it's a
Because
bit of a messy episode.
because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, this didn't really work for me. But I understand what people like about this. It's just
Mhm.
that it feels, and I guess now I have the language for it. It feels like what Marvel admitted to, which is they filmed a bunch of stuff and then tried to piece it together from what they had, instead of writing episodes out properly and
Mhm.
having a showrunner whose job it is to understand where things are going, where things are coming from,
Mhm.
and piece everything together. So I can't. I say that to say I don't really think it's fair for me to knock the show beyond this because they've already kind of exposed what the issue is. So it's
Yeah.
not like I can be like, oh, how come they didn't fix that in episode 3 through 6? It's like, yeah, like, it is what it is. It's already done.
Yeah. We just hope at this point they're gonna have payoffs in episodes 4, 5, 6, or however many episodes they have. But it's just, yeah, we have to accept that this is how they're gonna deliver things until they actually do
Until after the
reformat.
strike, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything that's coming out now was under that style in terms of the shows.
Correct. Correct.
So
like the movie being split into the 8-hour movie format versus now it seems like the direction is definitely more of a more traditional TV format from what I'm hearing anyways.
Yeah, they're gonna have to. They don't really have a choice. So yeah, let me go back to my notes. I'm sure I'm missing something here. Oh yes, sorry. This is when they're back at the TVA and they're like seeing all the pruning happening, and Sylvie's like, okay, so you see how this is a bullshit defense, right? And he's like, yeah, but this is still, and she's like, no, they are the problem. TVA is the problem. They're rotten. They're corrupt. This sucks. I'm not on board with preserving any part of this, as you said. The defund versus, let's try and find how we can modify this. I can't remember the word people use, but it's not about reforming. That's what I meant. Like, it's not about reforming. It's like this, as we said earlier, there is a different way. People just can't fathom it or don't think it's in their best interest, or know it's not in their best interest to fathom a different way of accomplishing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because their comforts would be gone at that point.
Yes.
They would be like, oh, I have to take care of myself. Like, yeah, like the rest of us do. Like,
not even that. Not even that.
Like,
it's the fact that they can't weaponize it against people.
Well,
not about take care of yourself. Because
absolutely, yeah.
The answer is education, community centers, and actually, I'm talking about police now. Like, having those things in place and having social workers respond to things because they are actually trained to de-escalate. Well, it's their job to de-escalate, not I'm sure cops will say they're trained to de-escalate, but they don't, as a bunch of video footage shows.
Exactly. Well,
So
how
it's-
are they de-escalating in their definition versus the social work definition, right?
So that's what I mean by it's not about like, hey, figure it out for yourself. It's just there is a different way. You just understand or don't understand, but are just very comfortable with the way things are right now.
Yeah.
So you're not going to, you can't even fathom a world where things don't happen the way you're used to it happening.
No, because there's no consequences to this kind of stuff right now. It's just like, oh, you call the cops as a personal security guard thing. There's no laws against that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's starting to be like the Karen laws in the States and all that, but you can legitimately still do that. It's like, I think this guy's a problem. I'm going to call the cops on him. We're going to detain him, gunpoint, anything. Oh, yeah, we're going to walk away and not apologize if that, which is like I saw footage the other day of like SWAT guys swarming some guy, Young and Dundas. And they're like, oh, he fit the description because they always say that bullshit. Yeah. And then when 4 hours later, after he got up, they just, oh, yeah, not the right guy. He walked away. No apologies, nothing. I'm like, this is fucking bullshit, man. I fucking hate this. So, yeah, this is what Sylvie's bringing up. It's not just, you can't format this. This is the whole thing. It's just, it was built for one purpose only by He Who Remains King to preserve this. You cannot maintain this and have that kind of free will that she was talking about. She's right. This whole thing is the thing that's going to continue.
Yeah, because Loki was like, "Oh, but he's just going to give free will and walk away." She's like, "Yeah, that's how it works.
That's how it works."
I also missed more Obi stuff with Casey, where he's like, "Yeah, we're all going to die here too," because He Who Remains, basically, you have to use his temporal aura to get out of here to open the doors. And he's dead. So that's going to be a thing. And we need Miss Minutes, but she's gone rogue. So Casey, it seems like Casey and Obi will be working on that in addition to Casey's other Renslayer thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to rebuild Miss Minutes or something like that. I don't know, or reprogram her, but it'll be interesting to see the two of them work together.
So we got our answer as to how they're going to work Obi into this, and I'm happy that he'll be in it.
Very much so, because when they were like, "Oh, bring this to Obi," I'm like, "Oh, I hope they don't do that every single episode where they just need him to identify."
Because it felt like, oh, so he's just in service to them. But I like that he was like, I could, or I could keep doing what I need to do, and you figure it out. And I like that.
It was great. It's like, what's the bigger priority?
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, so I'm glad that he has his own thing he can do. I mean, it's all in the service to what the show is about. But I think he's got his own thing, and that's great. And it also means that we can get more Casey as well. So that is all fun. I like that. But as I said, this felt weird for no good reason in terms of the cutting and stuff. And I guess that's what people felt about Falcon and Winter Soldier. I just liked the subject matter of that show more. So it didn't affect me as much. But here we are. It's affecting me now.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree. There's that opening where they're just like, oh, we're in London right now. I guess it's that just such a jarring thing. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, we got to fill in the gaps for what X5 has done.
Yeah,
great.
So, I mean, yeah, we'll be back for episode 3, but there we go. Breaking Brad, we did it. We talked about it. I'm pretty sure. And if we forgot anything, that's too bad. All right. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Gay Movies, Contra Zoom Pod, Springfield Googleplex. Please go to thatshelf.com to find those shows, our show, and even more shows that I haven't mentioned. So that'll be fun for you. And if you want to hear older episodes of our show, please subscribe to our podcast on all the different podcast platforms. And we're on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram at TDF Spoiled. If you want to email us, you can go to spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. So yeah, have a great week, and we'll be back.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.